Welcome to my YouTube channel. I've got Jocelyn King DeLay here with me again. She's has tremendous amount of experience with addiction and also with mental health disorders. And we're going to be talking about recovery and mindfulness. We just did a video on cravings and emotional triggers, and mindfulness is a very important part in recovery and a technique that one should use. So I'm going to go ahead and bring Jocelyn on board. Hello, Jocelyn. Thank you so much for being here. Let's talk a little bit about mindfulness.
All right. I don't have all of the history with me about how mindfulness came into being, but I can imagine that it probably might have started with people talking about and thinking about meditation again. And mindfulness is very likely a part of cognitive behavioral things, could have come from that. Again, I don't have all of the history on it, but I do believe that mindfulness is very important when it comes to individuals becoming more centered with mental health issues and with addiction issues.
Right.
Thinking and behaving go together. If you're being mindful, you may allow yourself an opportunity to think about what you're doing before you do it and think about the consequences of what you're doing. You know, many times we might be at a birthday party or at a restaurant, and perhaps we're trying to watch our diet. You know, if someone is a diabetic or something of that nature, and they recognize I cannot eat that piece of cake because it could cause me some negative consequences with my diabetes. So I'm going to be mindful and not eat that piece of cake. Or someone may be out in the woods hiking, they know that they're allergic to bees, and they may have an EpiPen with them in case they get stung by a bee, or some type of medication or Benadryl so that they won't become very ill. That is a part of mindfulness, thinking before you do something, preparing. Mindfulness also comes into play with mental health issues and addiction issues. If you know that being around certain people, places, and things would be negative for you, if you think about that before you do it and you recognize that there could be negative consequences, then you may avoid doing those things. And that's something that we encourage people to do. Avoid things that you know, people, places, and things. Avoid those things so that you will not be triggered to use. Also, mindfulness involves being in situations that might compromise one's recovery. Maybe it might not be good for an individual to be in a relationship during early recovery because it might bring into the picture for them more chaos and drama that they simply don't need in early recovery. So we encourage avoiding intimate relationships for the first couple of years that a person is in early recovery because it can become very chaotic.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
Right.
that's an issue surrounding mindfulness, and mindfulness can also be a little simpler. You know, if your job is causing you stress, perhaps you need to leave that job. So, of course, I always tell people find a job while you have a job. Don't just quit. If you can
Right.
avoid just quitting, find a job while you have one and move out of hostile working environments that are causing you stress and could potentially trigger you to do unhealthy things. In addition, mindfulness can be about um, finding peace in your life, finding purpose in your life. That's also connected. Meditation and mindfulness are connected as well. Remembering to get quiet, Get in a place where you can think about peace, visualize positive images in your mind, do deep breathing, box breathing, some type of breathing exercise to help yourself calm down. And sometimes it allows you, mixed with mindfulness, to take a look at whatever situation you might be dealing with and tell yourself, yes, this might be difficult, but this is not a reason or a rationalization for using drugs and alcohol, because I know what the consequences are going to be. If a person gets in their mind that type of thinking, they can potentially maintain recovery for a number of years.
Right. So the mindfulness that so with cognitive behavior therapy, especially with recovery, it's so important for people to recognize what belief systems that they have that actually sometimes interfere in
Yes.
their recovery process. So if they have those emotional triggers, they're coming from some belief system. So
Yes.
sense of deprivation, for example, is that I should also have, or someone else is having a better life, a better day, more than what I have. And so I'm being deprived of all these good things that someone else has, but you don't know really what they have or not have. It's just your perception and a belief system that,
Absolutely.
and I will also say that this belief system is being created through social media, through advertisements on like these big football games. You have to have alcohol, you have to have, a big picnic table and a lot of booze, and then you are happy. And so this belief system that if I have all these things, then I'm going to be happy. And when I don't have these things, then the sense of deprivation picks up. And so it's the belief system that one should really take a look at. But mindfulness, what I propose is for people to actually use this technique to become aware that there's this entity we call the ego, where the belief systems and narratives, constructs, concepts, and labeling are. And this is what causes a lot of suffering. And so the mindfulness is for you to be more present. And it comes from the Buddha, from the Buddhist teaching. That's where mindfulness was actually first talked about. And then, then it went into India, and then they came out with yoga. And so somehow we picked up on mindfulness, and Eckhart Tolle, actually, who he is my teacher. I would say I learned a lot from his teachings and his readings. But mindfulness is a technique to use to become aware of this entity and also to recognize the self, the real you. So when you're being in the present moment, you're actually living a very conscious, in a state of consciousness. You are fully present, fully aware. And therefore, these belief systems, you can manage those by saying that's just a thought or that's just a narrative, because we have so many narratives and people keep creating more narratives over more narratives. And if you have suffered from trauma, then you're going to end up, having a lot of emotional dysregulation, collecting a lot of data
Yes.
based on that. So mindfulness is so important. So cognitive behavior therapy is very good in recognizing where all this is coming from in here. And then,
Yes.
and to complete that process would be through mindfulness to be able to keep a check on this.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, to keep a check. So to be totally present and live through the self. And the self actually, is a place where it's comprised of joy, love, peace, contentment, and happiness. Whereas
Yes.
this functions in the past or in the future, but never in the present. So, you're going to have a lot of past. You're going to keep, if you stay in your head and you live through those belief systems, then you're always going to be miserable and unhappy and have a sense of deprivation, feeling bored, and stuck. And there are other things with mindfulness that people can do when they're washing their hands to keep keep observing the water and the soap as they are washing their hands. They also have a lot of dissociation, and
Yes.
dissociation is being physically there but mentally checked out. And so mindfulness is really helpful in keeping yourself in the present moment.
And in addition to those techniques that you mentioned, grounding in itself is a very important feature of mindfulness.
Right.
That's why it's important for people to sometimes have an object that they hold on to when they're beginning to feel a certain amount of anxiety or social anxiety, or begin to worry about possible scenarios that have not even occurred yet.
Correct.
Sometimes individuals can build up a scenario
Yeah.
based on the worst possible case that they can think of. And I call it writing a screenplay.
Yes.
They'll write a screenplay with the good guys, the bad guys,
Yeah.
and sort of play it out in their head almost as though it has occurred.
It has occurred. Correct.
And
Yeah.
it has not. And oftentimes it's irrational thinking,
Right.
but if an individual thinks about it enough, they can get their mind into a state where they feel like it actually is going to happen or has happened.
Correct.
And then dysfunction becomes rampant at that point, and confidence is obliterated, positive self-esteem is obliterated, and an individual may then isolate and feel like their self-worth does no longer exists. And it's important that grounding exercises um, can be practiced on a
Yeah.
regular basis, so that when someone has what I call an emotional emergency, they can grab that object or say a certain mantra or a certain saying. For some individuals who have a specific religion, they will go to their holy book and begin to read verses from that holy book to help ground them. Everybody should have their own individual grounding um, exercise or strategy, so
Right.
that they can bring themselves down from the state of worry and anxiety or agitation.
Yeah. And I like to add to that, oftentimes people don't want to be in the present moment. Somehow they find something over there more interesting. It's not even reality. So the major struggle for people is to get themselves out of there and bring themselves into the
Yes,
present moment, because that's all you have. You don't,
that's right.
you haven't been, you're not, that moment has not arrived. And so you cannot live it
Right.
arrive. So the biggest challenge is for people to stay right here. But see, if you live through this, then it can take you on a joyride. You can be, 3 months, you can be in the 3 months from now, or you can be 10 years from now and keeping yourself back and forth, but you're not living a life in reality. It's a psychotic life.
Yes.
Not real. And so a lot of these addiction issues also arise from living in the past or thinking about the future and not being totally present.
Right.
You only have one moment. And interestingly enough, there's so, if you're living through the self, then the self, it comes from a much higher intelligence and it's quiet. And I recommend people spending more time in keeping your attention on the silence
Yes.
than on the noise.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
to yourself. But anyways, thank you so much, Jocelyn. It's always great to have you here. We're going to go ahead and end this. And if you have benefited from this today, please leave a comment or two for me and Jocelyn. And we are going to be doing more as time is permits for Jocelyn. She's very busy these days. And Jocelyn, I thought you were going to say something about that.
Well, yeah, I am kind of busy, but I think it's important to help those who may not have an opportunity to receive treatment, or for parents, friends, that don't quite understand what's going on with mental health and addiction issues. And I think this is a great forum for that.
Thank you so much. And I look forward to seeing you guys here again. I'm wishing you the best.